Happy Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. We'll be breaking down everything you need to know in terms of our passage of our frontal boundary, which happened last night into the overnight hours, and what impacts we're going to see in terms of some cooler temperatures and some significantly drier air for the remainder of the work week. But then we'll talk about what changes lie ahead, specifically as we head into Sunday and into Monday throughout the weekend and into the beginning of the work week next week. So we will be staying dry through Saturday, a bit of a tease right there. Some real fall weather is settling in. That means we're going to have some chilly mornings and we're going to have our fair share of some very pleasant feeling afternoons. That's going to mean some high temperatures that are right there around average or even below average for a good stretch of days. Then we have the potential for rain starting on Sunday. So we're starting to get maybe a bit of a better idea of the timing, but we're not necessarily seeing anything in the way of model agreement thus far. We'll break down everything that you need to know. First things first, a walk around the quad, and no different than the last 2 days. Plenty of dark or deep blue in the sky. Nothing in the way of cloud cover as we look in all these different directions across our sky cams at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, down in Warner Robins, downtown Macon, and downtown Dublin. Just taking a look at the Georgia National Fairgrounds, and obviously it is a very beautiful image, but it's a very uneventful image. This time just about 2 weeks ago, we were just watching folks file in at that opening time of when the gates opened at the Georgia National Fair, but that is not the case anymore. The fairgrounds have been very, very quiet over the last week and a half in Central Georgia. Your temperatures hovering in the low 60s, mid 60s, and upper 60s. We actually have two areas already at the 70-degree mark, 71 in Dublin, 72 in Vidalia. But cooler and drier air continues to funnel in from the northwest, where you see those wind arrows coming in from. 72 for our warmest temperature down in Vidalia, matches the temperature value in Panama City, but it is short of a 73 that we find in Jacksonville, 75 in New Orleans, back over into Houston, 77 in Orlando, and then an 81 takes the cake for the warmest temperature down in Laredo, Texas, here at the 11 a.m. hour. And take a look at all of this cooler air. Look at all of those shades of light blue and even some dark blue as you go up into the northern plains, the Ohio Valley region of the country. And then it starts to transition into more of a dark green color, and that dark green gets a little bit lighter as you go down into central Georgia. But a pretty fine temperature gradient. Areas in the North Georgia mountains are actually still somewhere in the 40s here at this hour, even though we've already gotten, say, about 2 or 3 hours of sunlight already this morning. Your dew point temperatures, we continue to watch those go down. So they have been kind of scattered between the 40s and the 50s throughout the morning hours. We actually saw some areas of light green, which it looks like we just got an update to this map in real time, but some areas of light green shades were present across central Georgia this morning, kind of like what we see across the state line back over into South Carolina. But we're going to continue to watch these numbers get lower and lower, very likely to have our fair share of dew point temperatures in the upper 30s as we head throughout the afternoon today. So as we progress hour by hour into the afternoon, we will substantially get cooler and we will substantially get drier. Not necessarily cooler, but the cooler air will make its presence known and really start to slow the warm up that we've continued to see throughout this morning thus far. So still some patchy humidity, some patchy areas of light green in the southeast. Overall, the most humid atmosphere is still going to be down in Florida, and we'll talk about when we will start to see any of those areas of light green finally push out of the forecast. It was a bit of a breezy start. Thankfully, the wind's not necessarily as widespread now, but anywhere with a breeze of about 3 to 10 miles per hour across areas of central Georgia. These winds should get gustier as we head into the afternoon. So let's talk about some numbers. 38 for a morning low temperature. That was what was recorded at Middle Georgia Regional Airport. That was 13 degrees below your average low of 51 degrees this time of year. Now you may say, if we're that far below average for our low temperatures, your afternoon high temperatures probably aren't going to warm up too much, probably going to be below average. It was actually quite the opposite yesterday. 82 was your high temperature, so that is 5 degrees above average. The spread between what we started out the day with and what we wrapped up the day with for your morning low and afternoon high temperatures was 44 degrees yesterday. That is quite the difference, really feeling like two different seasons. 38 degrees, that's more reminiscent of a wintertime morning low temperature. 82 still kind of holding on to a little bit of warmth that you would see in the late summertime months. 90 degrees was the record yesterday all time back in 1943, and your record low 1 degree below freezing temperature. Now, thankfully, it's not the 29 that we saw on this graphic yesterday, but 1989, it was a very chilly atmosphere as well, even more so than any areas that we saw yesterday. In fact, this is just the morning low temperature recorded up in Macon. Down in Dublin, we got down to a temperature of 35 degrees yesterday morning. That is way too close to freezing temperature, but it doesn't look like we have any of those upper 30s that are going to be in store for Macon as we go throughout the rest of the week. Here's a look at your precipitation. We didn't record any rain yesterday with the passage of that frontal boundary. Remember, we had about a minuscule 10% chance of a very light sprinkle shower. Well, even if we did have one of those come over Middle Georgia Regional Airport, it didn't record enough in the way of rain to even total 1/100 of an inch. Your departure of rain now stands just above 2.5 inches above where we should be. So continuing to be above average, and obviously we're going to have more dry stretches of a couple of days, maybe even a week or two as we head into the fall season. Rain is typically pretty hard to come by during this time of year, but this number could possibly see an uptick in the near future when we get into the end of the weekend. Sunrise yesterday, 7:43, and sunset was at 6:54. So that sunrise actually creeping pretty close to 8 a.m. We are a lot closer to an 8 a.m. sunrise as opposed to a 7 a.m. sunrise, and we've been that way for quite some time. However, as we get into kind of the 7:50 territory, that's when we're going to look at the fall back to happen, that time change, and that's going to result in the sun beginning to rise before 7 a.m. So getting a bit of an earlier image of first light in the night sky a little bit into the 6 a.m. hour each and every morning as we go 2 weeks into the future. But for now, it's going to be kind of around the time we're starting our 7 a.m. hour on the stream on 13 WMAZ Plus before we start to get a glimpse of some light in the sky. So hour by hour, we'll continue to warm up right around 70 degrees as we go into the noon hour. Well, that was a very similar story to what we had yesterday, but giving you an idea about how that cooler air is going to filter in. It's going to slow the warm up. So we're going to kind of stall out as we get into the mid 70s this afternoon as that cold air does continue to make its presence more known. So 75 is the high temperature on this graphic, down to 73 as you roll into around dinner time. And then, of course, the numbers dipping down into the 60s as you head past sunset into around 7, 8, and 9 o'clock this evening. So your forecasted high for today, 76 degrees as opposed to 82, which we hit yesterday. So not going to be as warm in nature, right there around average, but 1 degree below average. So that's one of the main headlines, return of those afternoon highs that are back below average, but clear and sunny tells the story. We will have some gusty winds out of the northwest, maybe up to 20 miles per hour throughout this afternoon. And your sunrise this morning was at 7:44 a.m. Continues to get a little bit later each and every day, and that sunrise will continue to get later and later, of course, until we get into the time change, and then it will go before 7 a.m. But with the breezy conditions and the very dry atmosphere, it has warranted what we were talking about the past 2 days, a fire danger statement. Now, I've been showing you an example of a fire danger statement from last year over the last 2 days, but this graphic is updated and from the National Weather Service as of a couple hours ago. So the fire danger statement will be for portions of eastern and central Georgia. So as you can see, all of these areas outlined kind of in this tan color that stretches way back into portions of North Carolina, South Carolina, and we can even see areas of western Georgia included in this, like Columbus, areas over to the west and all around Taylor County. But almost all of central Georgia, maybe with the exception of Spalding, Pike, and Lamar counties, is under this fire danger statement, which just means that controlled burning or burning of any kind is going to be highly discouraged because any fires that can develop, they could spread very rapidly. And like I said, outdoor burning is strongly discouraged unless you're following the proper precautions, heeding all the guidelines by the National Weather Service, the Forestry Commission. And this happens when you have low relative humidity. 20 to 25% is what our relative humidity will be throughout today. That means we're going to see more of a difference between your actual temperatures and your dew point temperatures. And when you have gusty winds, that's obviously what can lead to some of those fires being a lot more widespread and getting out of control. We have the potential for gusty winds up to 25 miles per hour outlined by the National Weather Service. I'm only seeing some gusts up to 20 miles per hour throughout today, but overall, those are still your fair share of gusty winds. And the last ingredient you need for these fire danger statements, dry vegetation. It's no secret rain has been very hard to come by over the last month and a half, maybe even getting into 2 months here in central Georgia. So the soil and the ground is very, very dehydrated. We have lots of dry vegetation, and drier vegetation is going to be prime fuel to the fire, quite literally, in terms of anything that can spark a blaze out there in the wilderness. So if we had a more saturated environment, we've been getting round after round of significant rain, we weren't in any kind of dry or drought conditions, then of course the dry vegetation would not necessarily be a factor. The ground is pretty saturated. The more moisture that you have in the soil is going to lead to a bit of an inhibition of allowing fires to spread very rapidly. But this is likely to be issued maybe over the next couple of days as well, and you will start to see this issued quite frequently as long as we are still in this very dry stretch of weather. It's just whenever the winds pick up and we have kind of the passage of a frontal boundary, which really ushers in some very dry air in the forecast. So here's a look at your satellite and radar picture. Nothing in the way of rain, nothing anymore in the way of cloud cover. We actually did see some in our southeastern half early this morning, and those were kind of the last signs of our frontal boundary leaving us here in central Georgia. So you will start to see some of that cloud cover is still existing down on the northern Gulf Coast, off the Atlantic coast of the state of Georgia, but overall it's a very uneventful forecast for most of the northern 2/3 of the state. So here's where that frontal boundary is currently located, continuing to make its push down into northern Florida as of right now. And this is all part of that low pressure center that you do see up there behind the banner, on top of the banner. This cold front kind of drapes down from it. And then as it curves up into the mid-Atlantic United States, it starts to occlude. So it starts to overtake the warm front that has been ahead of it. And that's what's leading to your fair share of widespread precipitation up here closer to the center of low pressure over in western Michigan and over in areas of the northeast United States. Plenty of cloud cover, and along with that, plenty of scattered showers that are still in the forecast. But the dominating factor in our forecast now is going to be high pressure that will continue to slide over to the east. When you have high pressure, it's going to lead to a very dry environment, and obviously not associated with your more active weather like centers of low pressure typically are. So here's a look at what Future View has to say. Not much, just a steady breeze this afternoon as we go into 5 p.m., still full of crystal clear skies. Going into Thursday afternoon and evening, a few clouds that try to clip us and move over central Georgia, but overall, whatever we see will mainly be of the higher level cloud cover variety. And we transition all the way into Friday afternoon and evening. This is after you get off of work, heading out to the gridiron, watching some of those Friday night lights all across central Georgia. It's going to be a great forecast to do so. Nothing in the way of rain as we go all the way to Saturday at 1 a.m. Doesn't look like you'll need the rain jacket or the poncho, but you may just need the general jacket because those temperatures are going to get cool pretty quick as you go hour by hour closer to sunset or even just past sunset. So over the next 3 days, we'll really just focus on the numbers with nothing in the way of cloud cover or rain. 76 for a high temperature like we mentioned today. Your morning low temperature was 49 degrees. So it will be a little bit cooler tomorrow morning. We were just a little bit warmer due to a combination of factors this morning. We saw a slight uptick in moisture, which can create some slightly warmer temperatures. And along with that, we saw a little bit of cloud cover, a pretty thin line of cloud cover, but it did at least slow the cool down for just a little bit while that cloud cover was over you. And combined with that, the breezy conditions that we had early this morning. When you have all of those factors, your low temperature doesn't typically get as low as what's forecasted on a crystal clear and a calm wind night, and that's what should be in store as we wake up and head out the door on Thursday. Morning low temperature of 42 degrees, 78 for a high temperature, still plenty of that abundance of sunshine that will be present all the way through Thursday and Friday to round out the work week. Slightly warmer morning on Friday morning, but the afternoon high temperature actually a bit cooler than what we see on Thursday. So mid to upper 70s are what you should expect in terms of your high temperature day by day as we head throughout the last portion of the midweek and into the end of the work week. In terms of your humidity, like I mentioned, that's going to continue to push all of that light green down towards the south and the southeast. Even areas like Jacksonville are not seeing too much humidity whatsoever. Up here in central Georgia, your dew point temperatures are in a battle fight in between the upper 30s and the low 40s, indicating a very, very dry atmosphere and plenty of sunshine that will be in store over your short-term forecast. In terms of the winds, right now we're not seeing too substantial of a breeze, but watch what happens as we head into the afternoon hours. Some occasional wind gusts that could get up to 16 or 17 miles per hour. I wouldn't even doubt that we have the potential for some isolated areas to see wind gusts, say up to 20 or maybe even 25 miles per hour. But as we go overnight, not holding on to too much of a breeze as we head into tomorrow afternoon. Now areas in northern Georgia, northeastern Georgia should see some slightly gustier winds, and that may lead to a fire danger statement in areas, say, north of central Georgia throughout tomorrow morning. And then as we go into Friday, it doesn't look like we really have much of a breeze present whatsoever, but the breeze could build back for the morning hours on Saturday. Those occasional gusts, once again, up to around 15 miles per hour. Keep that in mind when we talk about your morning low temperature on Saturday here just now. So 45 as you walk out the door on Saturday. When you pair that up with a pretty steady breeze or some of those occasionally gusty winds, it can result in actually a wind chill factor. We've been talking about heat indices for the last couple of months where the humidity makes some of the temperatures feel a little bit warmer. Well, we don't really have anything in the way of humidity present, but when you have some winds with some pretty chilly temperatures like you see scattered about the 40s over the next 5 days, it can result in some of those numbers feeling just a little bit cooler than what they actually read. So go ahead and prepare yourself if you have plans to head out the door early on Saturday, maybe heading out on a hunting trip. It is definitely going to be nice and brisk, and I would even say a cold environment, but not as cold as what we did see the last 2 days with some upper 30s here in Macon. So we'll be thankful for that. You can always put the weather in perspective. It always could be worse. 51 is your average low this time of year. I imagine that number's getting very close to going down to 50 degrees flat, but temperatures in the 40s is going to become the normal over the foreseeable future unless we have some other kind of weather influence during the overnight hours. But tomorrow should be the coolest of the bunch in terms of what your morning low temperature is, and then we head into the weekend, still starting out with that chill in the air each and every day. Afternoon high temperatures bouncing around between the 70s, but after we get to 78 tomorrow, it looks like a steady temperature decline is in store as we head throughout the weekend. We'll talk about why that is. I do believe that really the decline from Saturday into Sunday is going to be in part because of increased cloud cover, and you will see that on the long-range models in just 1 second. But the humidity, we did talk about it at least until we get into Saturday. It's going to remain in this pleasant box, dew point temperatures in the 40s or less. But as we go into Sunday and Monday, there is a brief increase in the moisture content, and that's going to result in some slightly better rain chances. Dew point temperatures in the 50s obviously aren't super swampy. You're still really in the comfortable range, but it's where you start to get some faint areas of the light green color. So maybe some dew point temperatures between the 50s and the 60s. Definitely not really talking about those very muggy dew point temperatures in the 70s over the foreseeable future. But taking a look at your long range models going all the way through Saturday, there's a bit more cloud cover in the forecast that may result in about a degree or two of a decrease in your high temperatures as we head into the afternoon. But there's plenty of rain over to the west of us as we roll into Saturday night. That rain looks to creep closer and closer as we go throughout Sunday. But the first half of Sunday is still trending dry. It just looks like we'll have on and off cloud cover. And by the time we get into Sunday, more so the evening to nighttime hours, that's when at least one of the models is hinting at the rain moving into the state of Georgia. That's just the European here in blue. The GFS in green seems to think that the rain is going to kind of part ways. We're going to see a cluster of some showers back over to the northwest, down in the Gulf. But overall, it doesn't really hint at widespread precipitation moving into central Georgia. This goes all the way out to Monday morning, where still the European says widespread cloud cover and widespread rain chances. So the big point, and the main point, I guess I'm trying to hammer home with this is we're not seeing too much model agreement. So you can't go buying stock into what one individual model says. You like to see agreement amongst the models that, hey, we will see some widespread precipitation chances. If I were to go along with the European model right here, your rain chances would more than likely be around a 60 or a 70% this far out. But since we're not seeing agreement amongst its counterpart, the GFS, I still have a relatively low rain chance, because what if the European decides to back off of this and go more of the GFS route? Then obviously we wouldn't have much of a rain chance whatsoever. And the European is really the one that continues to bring widespread rain here. We could even have some scattered showers lingering in the picture through the later hours on Monday into most of Tuesday. And then as we go Tuesday into Wednesday next week, that's when I'm eyeing another cold front to start to move through. And if this cold front is to move through, say, on Wednesday into next Thursday, which the long-range models have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, but if that is the case, if the timing of that front moves through on Wednesday and Thursday, it does look to be a pretty dreary stretch for the first half of the work week, but it could have implications for your Halloween forecast, because conditions will start to clear out after the front moves through, and some very chilly temperatures could welcome you out the door on Halloween morning next Friday. So far, a lot of extended models are hinting at some upper 30s and some low 40s scattered about central Georgia as we head into Halloween morning. Excuse me, but only time will tell as we get closer and closer to that. We don't like to buy stock into anything that really goes past your 7-day forecast, but just kind of giving you an idea about the general setup that I'm seeing. If the front clears out and we start to see that cooler and drier air usher in as of early on Friday morning, then it does look like it's going to be a bit spookily chilly for your Halloween forecast, but we'll continue to fine tune that as we get closer. But decent chances at rain, and speaking of some rain, there is plenty of it down in the Caribbean Sea, courtesy of Tropical Storm Melissa, which did form at this time yesterday with the 11 a.m. update. Melissa has not seen an uptick in its winds whatsoever, still maintaining 50-mile-per-hour winds. The pressure has gone down just a little bit, down to 1,000 millibars flat from 1,003 millibars yesterday, and right now its motion is very, very slow. So when it first formed, Melissa was moving anywhere from around 20 to 25 miles per hour. That's actually back when it was that Invest 98L wave. And then once it got its designation as a tropical storm, it's really started to slow its motion across the central Caribbean Sea. And you can see that this cone is very close together. So obviously you would have to zoom in a very good amount in order to pick apart the specific timestamps of all these lines that you do see. But we are seeing some things with this. Number one, Melissa curving up to the north, but then going back out to the west as you go into the end of the weekend and then into the beginning of next week. But Melissa is actually forecasted to strengthen into a hurricane as we go sometime into Saturday, maybe into Sunday. Not only just a Category 1 storm, but a Category 2, and with the latest update, form into a major hurricane, a Category 3 hurricane. But there is good news with this, because it looks like there is more of a consensus that Melissa will continue to go back out to the west after it curves up to the north, and then it would make more of a beeline path for areas of Nicaragua, getting over into Honduras, Belize, areas of Central America, just to the southeast of Mexico. But this is where things stand right now, and taking a look at the spaghetti plots, which can give us a little bit more of a futuristic look about the potential path of Melissa. We've seen a lot more models go along the path that Melissa is going to go over to the west in the northwestern Caribbean Sea. This is according to the GFS, which had a lot of models going back over Hispaniola yesterday into the Atlantic Ocean. There's still a whole lot of models that actually go back out into the Atlantic, but it's starting to take that turn more so towards areas of Jamaica, Haiti, southeastern Cuba, and then start to make its path back out into the Atlantic. But overall, I do see the most number of those white lines right now just kind of hanging around in the Caribbean for the foreseeable future. This goes all the way to Sunday at 10 a.m. You don't see any of these model plots, say, curving up into the Gulf and maybe making a path for central Georgia. We're still not forecasting any U.S. impacts at this time. And taking a look at the counterpart, the European model, once again, good agreement that Melissa will just hang around here in the central Caribbean Sea, just to the south, maybe southwest of Jamaica. It may make a path over to Central America, or it may go back out into the Atlantic over portions of Cuba, the Bahamas, Hispaniola. Only time will tell. There continues to be a good amount of model uncertainty about the potential path Melissa will take, but the good news is one thing is staying certain, that it's not forecasted to take a turn up to the United States as of now, but I'm still not ruling out U.S. impacts to be completely impossible because due to the amount of uncertainty that we're seeing with this, who's to say that the next scan of these model runs, we don't see a lot of scenarios where Melissa comes up into the Gulf. And the Gulf is still warm this time of year, even though we are well into the fall season. It is something we'll have to continue to closely monitor. But it has warranted some tropical warnings and watches as of right now, specifically just some watches. So Jamaica right over here under tropical storm watch, which means within the next 48 hours, tropical storm force conditions are possible, not likely. That's when you start to get into warning territory, and that's a shorter time range. That's when you'll start to get within 36 hours of those impacts being very likely. And then over here, kind of on the Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti right here, a hurricane watch is in effect. So some stronger impacts are forecasted over here in western Haiti. But right now that would be more so closer to the center of circulation, I would say, with Melissa. And we have seen more model agreement of Melissa kind of curving back out to the west after it makes that northward turn. So of course Jamaica would be pretty close to that. I wouldn't be surprised to see that tropical storm watch upgraded into a hurricane watch or a hurricane warning as we go into the next couple of days. But these are the only two areas that do warrant a watch or a warning as of right now. But as we continue to watch Melissa move in the in the Caribbean, of course the Caribbean is part of the Atlantic Ocean, we'll probably see more of these Caribbean islands outlined in some kind of a watch or warning. In the near vicinity, we could see the Cayman Islands issued one. And then of course, if this is to start to move towards Central America, coastal areas of Honduras and Nicaragua are very likely to be included in some kind of watch or warning. But back here at home, here's where your 7-day forecast stands. Some true fall weather. And what I mean by that is some chilly mornings and some pleasant afternoons. High temperatures right there around average, maybe even slightly below average as we head into the end of the weekend. The more cloud cover we have in the forecast, you know what that means. That means we have less sunshine as you go into each and every afternoon. So your high temperatures go down into the low 70s, right around 70, or even the upper 60s, which I do have in store for your Monday right now. But the flip side of that is when you have that cloud cover present from sunrise until sundown, and then you get into the overnight hours and you continue to have that cloud cover present, it is going to result in some slightly warmer morning low temperatures. Actually 51 degrees is right at average for this time of year. I imagine your average is going to dip down to 50, maybe even 49 degrees as we roll into Monday and Tuesday. So these numbers will be slightly above average. And right now I'm maintaining a 30% chance of rain for the later hours on Sunday into most of your Monday as it does currently stand. This is far from set in stone. Like I said, we see drastic model disagreement as of right now. We'll continue to see if we can get those models on the same page to really show you how widespread the rain chances are going to get. But I imagine it's going to take another 24 to 48 hours once we can actually get Sunday within view of our short range models as we head into Friday morning. But hopefully we can get our fair share of widespread rain. We continue to talk about how dry of a stretch it has been as of recently. The high temperatures near 70 degrees as we roll into Tuesday, not necessarily a bad thing whatsoever. But as we head closer and closer to Halloween, let's take a look at some of your temperature and precipitation outlooks. Now, Halloween is going to be on the back half of this range. It does look like we have a good probability, maybe some slightly above average temperatures for this time period of October 27th, which is Monday, all the way through October 31st, which will be next Friday. And that means that we should probably see a warm up when some conditions try to clear up. But overall, I would expect a lot of these to start to see the near normal or maybe even slightly below normal ranges. Some of those light blue boxes to creep into central Georgia for this time period, especially if we're going to see widespread cloud cover. But there continues to be pretty good agreement that we should have a good probability of above average precipitation. Take a look at this. All of central Georgia in a pretty deep kind of green apple color. That is 3 boxes over to the right of near normal. So that means we have a good chance at being above normal for the amount of precipitation we receive in that time period, next Monday all the way to next Friday. Now, as we start to look into the extended models, maybe the 8 to 14 day outlooks, I would imagine that this would probably be near normal or maybe even below normal, but we would have a good probability of some below average temperatures because after a front passes through, like we're anticipating during the midweek next week, that would result in cooler and drier air funneling in. so your temperatures get cooler, but you have a drier atmosphere, which will lead to not as much in the way of rain chances. So that's kind of what we're seeing right now. Maybe some near normal high temperatures, but it does look like our fair share of rain could be in store for the last couple of days of October. We'll continue to keep you posted as we get a better idea of what's going to be in store starting on Sunday throughout the work week as we head closer and closer to Halloween. So that will do it for your extended forecast here this Wednesday, and we'll be back at 11 a.m. tomorrow with hopefully a better idea of what the models are trying to say next week. But otherwise, make it a point to tune in, and we'll fine-tune that forecast and keep you updated with everything that you need to know weather-wise. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.